This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today we are going to be talking about some current events in Canadian policing. This is going to be around the National Police Federation's recent report calling on the federal government to strengthen and modernize the RCMP. I also have some questions around the Provincial Police Service that Alberta was talking about, which will tie directly into some of the recommendations in this report. So for that, I have two directors here from the National Police Federation's Prairie region. There's Kevin Halwa and Jeff McGowan. So welcome to you guys.
Thanks for having us, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan.
I was saying just before we started here, the last time I had you guys on was 2023 already. I couldn't believe it was that long. So it's good to get you back.
Yeah, it does seem a lot longer than it was.
Well, it seems longer, but I got to tell you, everything just moves so fast. Like service-wise, it's no time and you're at the end, right?
Yeah.
So
it just, I guess
good.
we get so busy with the news, it keeps changing and things keep happening and just, you really lose track of time. So it's blowing right by, which, you know what? It's good that you're busy, but sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I didn't have these problems. So yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll kind of start with the Alberta Provincial Police thing, because it's going to tie into a whole bunch of the recommendations here. And I think some of the recommendations kind of pick off pieces of what people were thinking of or looking for when they have this idea of a provincial police service. So do you guys know where this is at all? Because my last understanding is we had our provincial election. This was like a big topic in there. The election ends, then we hear nothing about it. And then I want to say just a couple months ago, there was a bit of a news release on maybe just where this was going, but largely there's been no news. It's been very quiet. I know a lot of Edmonton police officers ask about this. I imagine on the RCMP side, it's the same thing. So from your perspective and your knowledge, where is it at? What's going on?
Well, that's good question, Nathan. And it does have a lot of questions. It's interesting because prior to the last provincial election, it wasn't really part of the campaign stump speeches at all. And then kind of after the election kind of blew up as an idea to, let's create a new provincial police service, one that didn't really, wasn't discussed during the campaign or anything like that. It was just kind of came out of the blue. So that caused some questions for sure from the voting public and the taxpaying public. That's the full-fledged provincial police, brand new service replacing the RCMP is kind of gone away, sort of, but not really. But instead, what they've done is now passed Bill, is it Bill 11, Jeff?
Yeah.
To create a new independent police agency. To now, and when they talk about they say, well, no, hang on, so it's not to replace it's not to replace the Mounties, but it's to give communities options and that kind of good stuff, and support police services already existence. But yet, mandate has not been stated. Funding has not been stated. Resource levels and all that. Like so many questions. It's really hard to keep track of, quite frankly. So it's your listeners are 100% right. They should be asking questions saying, what is this? Because when we talked about a full-fledged provincial police service with the removal of the Mounties, and now we're talking about this new independent police agency that would partially be stood up with the use of the sheriffs, flipping them over to this new agency, which caused questions within the sheriffs. So, some people are saying, well, hang on a second, this certainly sounds like the second verse in the same song.
Mm-hmm.
So is this just the same thing in a different mask? I don't know. And it's it's questions that we've been asking the provincial government, as I'm sure they've been getting questions from their constituents, and it's not really a question that's ever been answered. So it's lots of questions.
Yeah, I would simply say the easy, not the easy answer, but the succinct answer is we don't really know.
Yeah.
So there's been talk of independent police, Alberta Police Service. I'm not sure if that implies that, what the provincial policing with the RCMP is not independent. Maybe, I don't know, is that a bit of a dig in some fashion? Of course, it's not true. We don't know what it means. We don't know if it's intended to augment, which is what the minister has said, but there has been other instances where they talk about a sheriff's detachment, and if towns or like cities, towns, villages, whatever, want different options, then they're going to provide it to them. But again, with that, there's no details as far as logistics go. I mean, we've all been in policing a long time. We know exactly how much is involved in trying to create some of this stuff, from file records management to policies to, locations. I mean, you're going to deal with prisoners. Do you even have policy on prisoners? Do you have policy on how to feed prisoners? Like there is a lot going on here. And I think that you could, when we're looking at the report that just came out and they're talking about increasing recruiting, streamlining a lot of this stuff, it would probably alleviate a lot of these issues, because we do hear it from towns and different municipal contracts and the province where there are vacancies in some spot, but there are vacancies all over policing across Canada.
Yeah.
It's still that kind of job that people are not really gravitating to. So we have to do a good job of trying to attract these people and get them into the saddle, basically.
Well, I guess maybe on that, and just kind of on the last point that you were making there. So when a municipality is down people, they don't actually go to K Division. So people don't know, that's the RCMP headquarters in Alberta. So they don't go to K Division and deal with them directly. They have to talk to Ottawa, who then talks to K Division. K Division decides something, then goes back to Ottawa to talk back to the communities.
No, not exactly. So just taking the provincial policing agreement itself, there's an article in there that basically says if the justice minister or the justice minister, I think it is, not public safety, but justice minister wants extra bodies, on the provincial policing side, if the province wants to increase, I don't know, by 1,000, there's a piece that allows for the RCMP. They get notified, and it goes to the commanding officer. The commanding officer then contacts Depot and says, "Okay, we've just got basically an order for X amount of new people. Put it in," and they have a year to complete that. And the same thing holds true when you're dealing with any of the municipal contracts. So the municipality, if they want to, let's say St. Albert wants to increase the number of members that they have, they again put in the order, because the contract itself is very similar to what the provincial policing contract is, and they'll have the same articles. So they're not going to Ottawa for any sort of approval or whatever. All it is if they have the money, then they put the order in, and then you have a year to complete that order. It's because you got to get them trained up, and people, like, a lot of moving parts, obviously. But it's
just referring to Article 5 of the Provincial Policing Services Agreement. And it basically says out there, it says the provincial minister sets the size and makeup of the force, basically. Right. And as Jeff said, with the stroke of a pen, like ordering a pickup, going to order 7 of these. And the government of Canada, who the contract is with, has 12 months to produce those bodies. Yeah.
So are any local places, that, whether it's the small towns or the cities, are they kind of beholden to Ottawa for anything, or is everything able to go through, it all goes through KDIV?
Well, yeah. So the contracts are written in a different fashion here. So within Alberta, the province of Alberta has a provincial policing contract with the federal government. And then each municipality has its own contract with the federal government. and they're the ones that they send the message to. But for simplicity's sake, it has to go to K Division because that's where the conduit goes. They just alert them. Public safety doesn't say yay or nay to any of that stuff. They just say, "Yep, you want the bodies? Okay, we're going to send them to you, or we're going to put the order in," and then off they go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just to kind of clarify a little bit what Jeff was saying. So the larger detachments would have a municipal contract, like your St. Albert's, your Fort Saskatchewan's, that sort of thing, using examples from around the Edmonton hub. They would have a municipal contract, and that's where the city itself actually decides, okay, we want 7 more bodies, or we want 100 more bodies, whatever the case is, and orders it up. Some of those detachments, for example, Sherwood Park would be a great example, where they have a municipal contract, members doing municipal police work being paid by the municipality, but they also have provincial members that fall under the provincial policing agreement. Those are paid by the province, or a portion are paid by the province.
Okay.
So they kind of have 2 contracts going on in some locations at the same time. But the small spots in the province would be a good example. The Redwaters, Rimbies of the world, those would be strictly provincial contracts, where the size and makeup of those locations completely 100% up to the provincial government. Nothing to do with the RCMP in Ottawa, completely on the provincial minister's desk to decide whether they want to increase that establishment or not.
Okay.
And depending on how many, so if you use Slave Lake, for example, Slave Lake Detachment will have a municipal contract, provincial, and there's also FNP, so like First Nations policing positions in there that are solely paid by federal government.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these different areas. So you can increase one, reduce another, and move them as you see fit.
And you in the report, the one thing I liked in there was because I'm a visual learner, so there's some graphs and some charts that actually show the breakdown, right? The makeup of like how the money is spent, where that goes to, who pays for what. So like you're saying, at the municipal, provincial, and then the First Nations side of things, how that is actually broken down. I thought that was really good because, even when I think back to like 12 years ago when I was in the RCMP, and just people had all these rumors about who was paying for what and where things go. It's like, here you go. Here's the info. So that's nice to have.
Yeah. And when we look at it, I think for the general public, the police are there. You call the police, they come. The payment, the funding, the resourcing never really extends beyond that because they just want police to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the Canadian way where we've made it overly bureaucratic and you got different pots of money covering off all this stuff, but it makes it extremely confusing. So it's hard to wrap your head around where, like, what actual vacancies are. And when you're talking about numbers, some of those numbers may include logistical support. So it might be a civilian member, or it might be public service stuff where you need, because you can't just have boots on the ground, you have to have administrative support, logistical support to make the whole machine work. And there's a lot of things that are missed and confused. But again, like I said, for simplicity's sake, the public just needs to know that police are coming and their police are available. They don't care who's paying for it. But when it comes down to taxpayers, if you want to dive deep into it, those graphs really help because it'll break it down and say, okay, Slave Lake municipal contract, 90% is paid by the community, 10% is covered off by the federal government. On the provincial side, 70% is paid by the province, 30% is paid by that federal side. So there's real benefits, obviously, to running it this way.
Yeah. So maybe on a slightly different topic, I'm going to talk about the federal mandate because this is a large part of the report as well. And in this is just my opinion, I think this is where maybe when people talk about provincial police, they might see the change in that a little beneficial, where the shifting priorities. So in here, it even talks about, when we get a new government and the priorities shift, and it's like, well, we're not funding this or this type of file or group or whatever is not a priority. Or I guess another example is when we have a major event happen in Canada, we pull resources. The federal side was the one that was getting pulled from first. So I think that's where Ottawa kind of comes in a little bit more than people like. Whereas if it was more of a local thing, it's like, well, maybe Alberta's sending people, maybe we're not, but you still have the resources within the province. I feel like all this stuff always comes down to money, it's budgets and control of resources.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting the way it was laid out in the report. If the RCMP mandate changes because of a shift in political party, what becomes the priority? So, can you talk a little bit about this part here where you guys have this idea of fenced funding? So, I kind of like where that was going and some of the stuff it talked about. Could you explain this fenced funding and how we prioritize those bigger things such as foreign influence and then organized crime that's expanding and crossing international boundaries now?
Yeah, so the fenced funding, I like that idea within the report as well. So the fenced funding piece simply says that this money is dedicated for this purpose exclusively, and you cannot use it to either cover off shortfalls in other areas or redeploy those resources. And I look back just on my service, and the first best example that I saw. So I was in probably about 2007 to 2009. I was in the federal drug section here. So the federal drug section deals with obviously matters that affect the national interest. They're larger in scope, cross-jurisdictional, et cetera. So we were focusing obviously on drug work at that point, and I happened to be on the Clan lab team. So we were dealing with your meth and your all of those clandestine labs that create all this stuff. After you saw the terrorist stuff start to happen, you started to see more of this starting to increase. You saw that shift in resources move to INSET. So that was your integrated national security teams. So the people that were dealing with the drug side of the house were suddenly refocused and retasked to deal with national security stuff. And I would argue that during that time, we never saw that kind of proliferation of Clan labs, all of these kind of designer drugs where you see with the importation. I think BC saw some massive increases in the fentanyl production and your MDMA and your ecstasy and all this other kind of stuff. Prior to that, you didn't have that because there was a dedicated focus to it. Then all of a sudden, national security becomes a priority. Everybody moves over there, and nature abhors a vacuum. And you saw all of a sudden that rise in all of these kind of designer, fentanyl, meth, that kind of stuff. So the idea would be you never actually remove those people from the FSOC or the Fed dope world, but you ensure that your INSET side is increased because it's almost as if you're running from crisis to crisis because you're not funding and resourcing those areas where you need to. If we didn't have that,
that's the definition of policing.
Well, right. I mean, and you would see that within the Edmonton area. I think with the homeless issue, where there was a proliferation of homeless people, then all of a sudden resources get moved.
It's homelessness, and then next week it's gang stabbings, and then next week it's something else. We're always on our heels. It's like, why are we never getting ahead of things?
Yeah. Right. And there's no opportunity in that instance to become proactive because fundamentally, like to my mind, when you're looking at federal policing, the federal stuff should be targeted. The federal stuff should be dealing with, national security issues and identifying foreign interference or identifying the drug trafficking and importation, like these kind of things. And then you wouldn't be stuck trying to play catch up the whole time and then robbing Peter to pay Paul, basically, to deal with the issues that you haven't really addressed in the first instance.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like kind of Jeff's point, like when you have a very finite set of resources and you have all these problems pop out, like you kind of have to jump around from one to the other, and it seems to always be reactive, and it's problematic.
Yeah, and I liken it to that when you're working patrol or general duty, you go on, you don't know necessarily what's going to happen that day because you're reactive to the calls. And I think that, and there's a concerted effort, because you'll see in well, they're doing projects here in Alberta that I know of. In a lot of the provinces across Canada, there's always targeted stuff, but those things sometimes take a back seat when there is a new and dangerous problem that's coming up. Under the general duty rule, you just roll in, you sit back. Well, you don't sit back. I mean, obviously you're patrolling and stuff, but you're looking for active crime, criminality, and you're trying to deal with that, and you're answering calls. The best case scenario would be, in the federal world, you identify, and you have sources and intelligence, because it's all intelligence led. You identify these areas, you focus in these areas, and then you can stop these things from happening, and you have a better handle on it. You're never going to eliminate it. The idea that you can get rid of crime, get rid of drug trafficking, it's a nonsensical approach. It's utopian. It's never going to work because of human nature, but you can mitigate a lot of this stuff.
You know what? I think when we're talking about the funding, it's the RCMP has so many things it's taking on, and unless they're going to have individualized mandates, so if you got that fenced funding and you said this amount goes to firearms and this amount goes to whatever type of national security issue, whether it's terrorism or the narco trafficking, and you kept it at that, and you ran that, I'll call it a branch or a bureau, you ran that independently, like it had its own chain of command, it has its own funding, like a base level, here's what you are guaranteed and we're not touching that. I think that would, if it had that, maybe that would lessen those calls for the RCMP to turn into, the ATF and the FBI and DEA, because the RCMP kind of covers all of those, and that's the unique part about it, is it has all these different areas it takes on, but is it truly run, independently, each of those areas, that it could actually pay the respect to, pay the attention to how big the issue is. If it's not properly funded, that's going to be one problem. Legislation and all that stuff is another problem. But on the resource side, which is what we're kind of talking about, can we properly address that if we had the fenced funding and we ran these things as like independent bureaus of sorts?
Well, I don't think that the answer lies in running it independently, because with, as well as I do, within policing, everything touches everything else.
Yeah.
So in order to have that,
not to silo it.
You're right. Yeah. And that's ultimately, when you look at, let's say, the US, for example, I mean, that's why Department of Homeland Security was created, because they wanted to amalgamate your ATF and your border security and FBI. They wanted to have all these pieces going into an area and have one kind of command structure. That's essentially the RCMP. You have all of these different areas, and there's an ease at sending information or operating with other groups, because there's obviously an interoperability piece, but there's a shared experience. There's an ability to understand the language.
Yeah, the language, the terminology, the culture, and like how we deal with the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think needs to occur is we maintain, just on the federal side, because there's lots of things that are obviously fall within the federal mandate, which is what they're kind of doing now. But I think that to have it all incorporated with even the contract side, you're increasing your national security footprint by having a national police service that can talk to itself and have a shared interest and shared goals. Because, like I said, I mean, any of your cartel groups, I mean, it's not just drugs. It's going to be guns, and it's going to be people, and it's going to be, potentially national security issues or threats that are going to be using these smugglers to bring people in. So that's not a drug thing. It's not It's not, so you can see where it kind of all ties in.
Yeah, I guess, and my example is oversimplified just for general listeners, because people
Yeah.
see it as that. It's like, well, your gang unit, your firearms unit stuff. I'm actually a huge proponent of going away from that. I think it should be largely integrated teams, and you have your special areas in there. Like, you have people who are really good at writing warrants. You have your people who can do surveillance. You have ones that can go out and talk to people or handle informants. Everybody has their kind of thing they're good at. But we do need to get away from that linear idea of like, I'm dealing with firearms and there's nothing else going on around this. They're always tied in together, especially with the crime groups. Wherever they can make money, they'll make money. So
yeah, and I've said that forever. If they could make money smuggling shampoo, they're going to make money smuggling shampoo. So it doesn't matter what the commodity is, and that's where we need to really refocus our attention. It's on the criminality of it, and I guess even looking at integrated, like INSET, integrated national security enforcement teams, CSIS. You got EPS in there up here. You've got the military, you've got the RCMP. Like there's people from all over, and they're pooling because they're also talking to their home agencies, because it affects their home agencies. And then with the National Police Force, as like the RCMP as the National Police Force as the lead on it, we're across the world technically, because we still have liaison officers everywhere, but we have that ease of communication, ease of interoperability. Things. I mean, nothing's. I shouldn't say ease. Easier than normal, because I mean everything seems to be difficult these days. But it makes sense to me. So
the other spot that I thought, and this would be the last thing I bring up provincial police on, but it's kind of the gap that I've seen. I see this within municipal police side, and real basic examples like frauds. Like, if I don't have a fraud, if I take a fraud as a patrol officer, unless it's hitting like $1 million and there's multiple complainants, there's a bunch of stuff going on, nobody else is looking to take that, like no other unit. And so it's kind of residing with the person who goes to the 911 calls. Like, I don't know anything about banking, accounting, finance. Like, how am I going to do the best for this complainant? Am I going to be able to do the best? Now, when I talked to a couple weeks ago, I had Detective Kushandish on from, I'm going to get this wrong. I want to say it was York. I almost said Peel, but I'm pretty sure it was York. And he works in the area of intelligence. And one of his parts of his portfolio is this foreign interference stuff. And he's said, like, I've taken stuff to the RCMP and they're not interested, but they don't have the resources at the municipal level to work on it. So there's these massive gaps when we look at within the municipal side of things from one unit to another. Then we have gaps when we look from municipal to the federal, like so, and the RCMP is the only one who can do the federal side. And it's just, who's going to fill that area of expertise, and where could we, find a solution to deal with that type of stuff? So I'm wondering, is that kind of maybe the fence funding thing, or is that something that I don't even know if the RCMP has the capacity to take that on too?
Well, ultimately, it always rests with capacity. There is just so much going on, and you see it, right? I mean, we saw it when they changed theft under $1,000 to theft under $5,000, because there's just so much changing. Like, it just simple things like that. It's kind of the reality. I think some of that focus, and it speaks to it in the report, where they're talking about special constables or different areas where you can bring in specialists and you don't have to use them as regular members. Like, best case scenario with all police forces, you go through, your basic training, you go out on the street, you learn how to talk to people, you learn how to fight with people, you learn how to arrest people, and then you transition into those higher areas because you need to learn those basics. The problem is, of course, policing and the world has gotten super complicated.
Mhm.
And when you're like using your fraud example, if you're looking at production orders and search warrants, like, do you have time to actually do that? Do you have the expertise to deal with that? We actually have within like Canada, people who love that stuff, and I think potentially would be looking for a change. Now, does it make sense for us to try and bring them in, put them into depot, send them out to high level, stay there for 4 years, and then try and get them? No, not necessarily, because their skills could fade. The ideal thing would be to bring in almost like an FBI analyst kind of role,
Yeah.
where you bring in expert people. They're not special agents per se, but they're actually doing this kind of specialist analyst work. That to me would take on a lot of that, because then you don't have to deal with the issues, or not the issues, but the issues that a regular member have to deal with by throwing them into the regular staffing kind of program. You can dedicate them. You can fire them in where you need it.
Yeah, you're getting pulled in multiple directions constantly as a regular member. So it becomes very difficult to really dig in to a file. And if it is something that interests you, well, now you got to try and get some training or education on it. And that just makes it time consuming. Time is the ultimate resource that nobody has.
Well, and it goes back to a lot of the points that were talked about in there. There are certain things that are identified, certain areas where they say, well, you need to increase. There was one from, I think, the 2010, the Red Cert, when they did that report, talking about increasing it by 5,000. Our numbers have stayed static, but population's increased. The nature of crime and the requirements from the courts have increased. Like all of these things,
the complexity.
We have not kept up with it. So,
no, I was just going to say the complexity has gotten like way more. What used to be a real simple file and a simple investigation, everything is more complicated now. More evidence, more data, all that kind of stuff. That all takes time and resources.
Just video alone, and I know the body cameras was mentioned in there, getting that out to the front lines, and that is huge amount of data. And the time it takes to go through and vet, and it's crazy. And one of the things you're bringing up there, kind of touching on, is the recruitment and training, and it also has in the report how much we spend compared to some of the other first world countries, and our per capita numbers of police to people, and the dollars to police, and I thought that was pretty fascinating, because if we're looking at like the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety and security is the base level, but we choose to not spend as much on those things. And I think we for the longest time had kind of this veil of where we felt very safe and secure, but we're starting to see in this world, and as we're being told in a lot of respects by other countries, hey, Canada, you're part of the problem, and there's a lot of bad things in your country and a lot of things coming your way or our way. So this is something that I think we really need to pick up on. I like that you're mentioning there the extra 1,000 bodies. I think it was Mark Carney's government has said they're going to go ahead with. So they've just said that so far, but we'll see if they end up paying for it and we can get them, right?
You're bang on the head there, Nathan. It's one thing to say, there's 1,000 more bodies. It's another thing to actually put that in motion, actually happen. The old adage is true. Talk is cheap. Let's see the product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is, and I think honestly, especially with the way that the governments have kind of the way that they've been progressing is it almost seems performative. So it's announcements to appease people, and then all of a sudden it's like gone from the brain, and nobody ever actually thinks about the follow through.
Yes,
devil's in the details, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at our numbers here. I mean, the per capita or percentage GDP on policing, like Hungary, United Kingdom, France, United States, Sweden, Ireland, Finland, and then Canada's way down at the bottom. And I think it's complacency, and honestly, a success of Canada, because I think it's allowed the population to exist in this world, and it has been pretty good. But I think as the world becomes smaller and we start to see more people moving between countries, you're going to see all of a sudden an added complexity. And when we're not keeping up with this reality in the world, and I think that if we were to increase and maintain the funding, then we would be in a better position to actually keep up with it. Because realistically, governments plan for what, 5 years, 4 years down the road. There's no real long-term focus.
Yeah. And I think this kind of ties into the procurement, which is also one of the key recommendations that you had. But when the RCMP, it seems to me, is largely just treated like another department in the government. And you're like, but on the procurement side, we're not talking about pens and paper. We're talking about things that we need to keep people alive and protect others. So, we need a different process for that. When we talk about the recruitment and training, we need a different process. It's not just the static, hey, come in, do your interview, go to HR, those type of things. You in the report, you're talking about running things concurrently, getting things done. Let's speed it up. And I think in large part, the Canadian Armed Forces falls into the same boat, right? They have the same issues with recruiting. They've made some changes, but safety and security just seems to be the afterthought. So the military has been kind of left to languish, and things are now just expiring or going past their best before date, all their equipment. RCMP, the pistols, I think it said they're 25 years old now. So it's just crazy.
Yeah, somewhere there. Yeah. Yep. The pistol procurement has been extremely frustrating. Something Jeff and I have been pretty passionate about since the MPF stood up, and Jeff was working on it long before that. You're right. Like when our members were getting issued those pistols, the Smith & Wesson 5946, NYPD was getting rid of them. So they were already old technology when we were getting them. That being said, they were still a massive improvement at the time compared to the old 38. So it was a stopgap at the time. But to get this new pistol and anything procurement off the list and actually into the hands of members just seems to it's mind-boggling how complicated it really is when it really shouldn't be. Be quite honest with you, and it's almost like they're often chasing perfection while trying to 100% avoid any sort of civil action by any one vendor because they didn't get the contract, and all of that coupled together makes the process like beyond glacially slow, and it is very, very frustrating. Everyone else seems to be able to get it figured out, but because we're stuck in this Government of Canada procurement OODA loop, for lack of better words, it just seems to go nowhere. It's very challenging. Jeff will have some comments on the pistol for sure.
Man, I got to tell you, it's the bane of our existence. I think the first gap analysis study was done in 2015, and it was identified that, okay, there are issues here with this, and we're almost 20 years in. Normal life cycle is between 10 to 20 years for a pistol. We should be looking at evergreening this out. We should have a plan. So there was a plan. Then there was another study that was done. I want to say it was 2018 by people out of Ottawa. It was really excellent. I mean, obviously, you have to, within the federal government, there's GBA plus. So that's gender-based analysis, all these things to make sure that everybody who uses it can use it. And it works out fine because it becomes basically a polymer striker-fired pistol, basically modern pistol.
Yeah.
Simple thing. And then all of a sudden, it languishes because I don't know if there's no impetus for it, no urge, no sense of urgency. I mean, there's a sense of urgency for the members, but they're just kind of sitting back and letting it happen, right? Like nobody's actually pushing these things. It is amazing that the National Police Force of Canada cannot get a pistol when every other military police force in the world can do it. It is remarkable.
Yeah, like that. The same people that are figuring out something as in how to get something as important as a pistol to the hands of the member are also the same people that are doing the contracts for notepads. Like there's a huge difference. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's just whoever's making those decisions of who is in charge of that process. If they just don't get it, maybe they don't care. It's definitely frustrating. But I guess on that, it's where's the accountability piece? Like, so at least the RCMP is unionized now, that you can actually go and bring things to the bargaining table. But would these type of things start to fall into a grievance? Like, we'll use the pistol, I guess, is probably the most glaring example. I know there's a million other things you're trying to get done, but it's just like, at what point do you go, you are actually, like, to the government or the ministers, it's like, you are actually not making it safe. Like, you are not doing what you're supposed to do.
Well, so Canada Labor Code, we fall under that. There was a complaint made under the Canada Labor Code with respect to the pistol. We're tracking all of this stuff. If you look at Moncton, the RCMP was fined. Like, I think was it three charges under the Canada Labor Code they were convicted of, the RCMP, and it was huge fines. Nobody learned anything from that. Recommendations coming out of that report and the Management Advisory Board all talk about procurement. Moncton with McNeil, obviously, Matt, a big issue. The problem is, when you're asking about accountability, that means somebody is responsible for it. There is nobody responsible for it. It doesn't fall to one person. It is just this weird conglomerate of people kind of doing something. And if I can quote Brian Sauve, because he's mentioned it before, failure is an orphan within the federal government. Nobody is accountable. Nobody's like, realistically, do you think it would be appropriate if, I don't know, some oil field company was running something and they were identified as lacking something in the safety side, and they were advised, you need to get it, you didn't get it, and then all of a sudden somebody dies, or as a result of your failure to obtain that thing, somebody got hurt or like something happened. You don't think at the very least the person that should have been responsible get fired? And I'm not actually even advocating for somebody to get fired on it. I'm just saying that somebody needs to take responsibility for it. Does that mean then that somebody within the RCMP at the highest level, one of the deputy commissioners, or, I mean, the commissioner's got enough on his plate, but certainly a deputy commissioner could be somebody who would say, you know what, enough of this. What is the problem? Why isn't this pushing? And then if it's not being done by their subordinates, go directly to Procurement Canada, and then, if necessary, have legal outline the liability issues with failing to do this thing. We are seeing it with the hard body armor. We're seeing it with carriers. We're seeing anything that we need to operate, we're not getting done, certainly not in a timely fashion. I mean, the list is endless. It's embarrassing.
Very long list. It's very long list.
Embarrassing.
Well, I don't envy your guys' job. I know there's a lot of stuff, and especially when you got to hear about different issues across different provinces, right? It's it'd be a never-ending job. Just kind of as we come up to the end of our time, I want to make sure we just get some updates and news in here. So outside of this report coming out, is there anything else kind of going on? Any projects or other news that you could pass along right now?
Well, your listeners may have heard of this tiny little meeting that's going on in Kananaskis right now. So with some important people from across the world, also known as the G7. We're just wrapping that up this week. We have about 3,600 members of our members deploy to the Kananaskis and Calgary region from across the country. And let me tell you, despite some of the
logistical,
and I was going to say, some of the harsher working conditions that some of these members are working in, and especially in the backcountry, our members have done an absolutely phenomenal job and have overcome all those challenges and basically mounted up and got the job done. And as a result, the event's gone off without any major hitches, some hiccups for sure and logistical nightmares. But as far as getting the work done at the end of the day, getting things across the finish line, our members did in typical Mountie fashion, got it done, which is phenomenal to see. And it actually speaks a little bit to the flex capacity that the RCMP provides the country that most other agencies just can't do. We have, Jeff and I toured some of the most remote sites yesterday and chatting with members, and we like coast to coast, like we talked to members from the far east coast and the very, very far west coast and everywhere in between that all came here to pitch in and help and keep the world's leaders safe. And it's interesting. And I think that flex capacity is sometimes missed by the general public. They just see a member in uniform. It's like, well, must be a Mountie, and I assume they're from here when in reality they're not. We talked to everybody yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was that's an interesting thing that's going on recently. And then there's other events coming up this summer. The
ride.
musical rides coming to Alberta and touring just about every corner of the province. I can't remember how many dates there are, but Jeff and I will be at some of those meeting and greeting with the public, along with some of our GR and comms team. Chatting with some folks, and we look forward to chatting with as many people as we can out there.
Yeah, and just to echo Kevin's point, all the members that are there, because there's a contingent from Edmonton, there's a contingent from Calgary, sheriffs are there. Everybody is pulling in the same direction, and everybody understands their role. And again, notwithstanding some of the issues or problems, everybody just keeps it going, and they're doing their duty. Yeah, there's been some problems, but for the most part, and I would say overall, morale has been pretty good with a lot of the members, and they recognize. They're not blind to it. They understand that yes, this is a very major event, and when we, prior to starting this thing, we were talking about the hockey and Stanley Cup and how, logistics and trying to get this thing spooled up. Always you're going to have, when you're deploying this amount of people, some issues. But yeah, everybody's been working long hours, hard hours. And, sometimes, beautiful location because you can't complain about Kananaskis and Canmore area, but it's been good. It's been good just getting out and speaking with the members.
It's 100%.
One thing we mentioned too a bit earlier was just speaking up for the members and how Canadian policing sometimes is a little, I always say it's a little bit ho-hum and everybody's just so laid back and goes with the flow. But I do think, and this is one thing that I like about the NPF is you're out there actively putting this stuff out, putting out these recommendations. And it seems from where I'm sitting that you're in front of the politicians, you're in front of the decision makers. And I really respect that. And I think there needs to be a bit more of that among the associations. And, it's we can't just always be sitting back and being the nice guy about things. It's like, we do got to push some stuff, hold people accountable, and speak up a bit more.
Yeah.
One person that I always have on here that I love having on is Joe Gamaldi from the the Fraternal Order of Police down in the U.S. because that dude's like a firecracker. But somewhere in between that, I think Canadians could find a ground in there. I don't know if Canada would be able to go that far. But they have such a different environment down there. But I think we do need to light a fire under some asses up here and get people going.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was just going to say, you talked to Nathan about, getting in front of politicians, all that kind of stuff. We do that regularly. Some are a little bit more agreeable to meet with us than others. But we did just have a parliamentary breakfast in Jeff and I weren't there because we were tied up with G7, but parliamentary breakfast in Ottawa here last week. And our folks there were able to meet with several of the leaders there to lobby for different things. So
yeah.
It's a never ending job.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. We have, and policing across Canada, it's almost a British sensibility where you are, to quote a term, a quiet professional, and you basically carry on and get the job done. And for the longest time, and I think this is true of almost all police forces, we don't do enough to celebrate a lot of what it is that we do. We just kind of no comment, and we don't do enough to tell our story. We need to. I mean, the public appreciates.
It plays into the mental health aspect for a lot of the members too. Right. It's not looking for accolades and awards all the time, but it's like, Jesus, if we could just tell one positive story in the media for once.
Yeah. 100%. We said before that failures in policing, extremely public. It's on the front page of the paper, and it's the leading story on the 6 o'clock news. But those successes and that great work by police officers, and I don't think it's even just Canada thing. I think it's a whole North American, probably worldwide thing. Are those successes and the good work is often very, very private, and which is disappointing, because I think if those success stories were more well known, broadly recognized across the globe, maybe there'd be more people signing up to come do this sort of work. Because let me tell you, it's a hell of a career. It's a good time, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So
yeah, and I think just on that front, when we're doing media releases, when we're explaining what we're doing, a lot of the times, sorry, it's under investigation, we're not going to comment on that stuff. We can be a little more forthcoming. And that's one of the reasons that I like the way ACERT does some stuff, because they'll come out in front and try and dispel the rumors, the innuendos, because we see it all the time with any member-involved shooting. Because I think, especially some of the ones that have been public within EPS, I've seen, because I know what the backstory is on a lot of this stuff. And to my mind, the shooting is perfectly legit, and we know that it's going to work out that way. But the public doesn't know, because the EPS leadership at times is not forthcoming in what needs to be done. And I understand, ACERT's running their file. The RCMP, we do the same thing. But I think that even just taking a little bit of a lesson from the US, they are very front and center in explaining, okay, this is what happened. This is what we can tell you. This isn't going to wreck any sort of investigation. So you can lay a lot of this stuff out there so the public actually does have a better understanding.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of time. I really appreciate you guys on here. So I'll get you out the door in a few moments, but I want to say thank you for being on here again today. And we'll try to not make it 2 years in between. I'll try and get you on here before then.
Appreciate it. We really appreciate coming on and being able, just this long form stuff to really get the messaging out there. We appreciate having you.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, Nathan. And we appreciate it for sure.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.